I'm fine because this is all a liberal hoax, and the reptilians are the. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, no,
I
we're
got scared for a minute. Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in our honored guest for a chat, Misha Mansoor, solo artist, Periphery, gear and electronics maven, guitar legend, all these hats you wear, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm wearing the car hat today,
I see.
and that made me late for this, so I apologize in advance. But
No worry. I like the Porsche shirt, and it's all good. You know, you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you making time for us.
of course,
So we're getting together to talk about this unbelievable project. It's like I had to kind of like game plan even where to start talking about it. So this Bulb Archives project is 10 records, volumes 1 through 8, and also orchestral and electronic as well. The is beautifully put together, man. I know it's been in the works for a long time. If you can, let's dial it back and say, what was the idea to undertake this massive project? It's massive, like it really is.
it is a massive project, but it's also something that most of the work was done beforehand in a way. This is all stuff that's been floating around. I think when I started writing music, I was doing it very purely. It's kind of a beautiful thing. I was just writing it to write it. I didn't have any delusions about, even being in a successful band or anything like that. That seemed sort of an unrealistic goal. So it was really just doing it for the love of it and just discovering. As I started first writing, it was kind of around the time that you could just kind of take your home computer and start recording on it. So it was an era of discovery for me, and a lot of these little ideas were just me kind of playing around, just seeing what I could do, what I could get away with. I was posting this stuff up on forums and wherever. And then when the band became serious and we started to do releases, like Bulb was always just this nebulous idea. It's just like, anything that doesn't make it to Periphery just sort of defaults to Bulb or whatever. But it's all up for grabs, and any OG fans might recognize some riffs that made it into Periphery or whatever. But these demos were just sort of floating around. So I noticed sometimes people would be like handing out like Dropbox links as if they were sort of like neo mixtapes or something, of like their sort of curated collection. And there was never anything comprehensive or complete. And then other people were uploading songs up on YouTube and sometimes getting substantial views. And I was like, probably should do something about this. So especially now that we have our label and whatever, it was just everything sort of just converged perfectly. To where it made sense to do it. I spoke to our management our manager who helps us manage our label as well. And he was like, yeah, like this makes a lot of sense. He was the one who, again, this is why I defer to him on a lot of this stuff, because my sort of instinct was to just put it all out there. Cause I also don't care, I was just like, I had to put it out there. He's like, no, like that's going to be tough to digest for, a lot of people have no idea what this is. So maybe you should, divide it up into like sort of digestible archives or whatever, or volumes or whatever. And so that's why I think it's something like 109, 110 songs that I curated down, because there's more stuff, but like there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of crap in there, but I don't know. Maybe this is somewhat for posterity or something. I don't know. Like it's just out there. It's kind of, it's maybe a little bit cathartic to just have it be out there and just not have to think about it anymore. And people can have easy access to it now,
Nice. Just from a musicology standpoint and pure ridiculous, like data points for nobody but myself, I was like looking at the volume of songs plus your other catalog plus things you've also worked on, and it's like, who has this many releases or this many songs out in the world? It's like Prince, Tony Bennett, the Beatles, Metallica, Dream Theater, and Bulb.
Devin Townsend's definitely up there.
Devin Townsend, Arion, Madonna, and then it's a small list after that. Like,
yeah.
So maybe Willie Nelson, but anyway, Johnny Cash back in the day. So Bob Dylan, but yeah, man, this thing is terrific, and I totally feel you on that labor of love thing, and how it's like at one hand just put it out, and on the other hand, I do love the really beautiful packaging and the thematic kind of stuff that stretches across all the releases. There are a few of them that seem very thematically grouped, and then there's a couple of records that are just like whatever, punk rock song, electronic song, waltz.
Yeah,
you know,
it's semi chronological, and also I just sort of tried to like round out each. You know, people asking like, what is it? Is it purely chronological? It's like generally, but not even. You know, I was trying to round out some stuff. There's no real rhyme or reason to it, but it is generally like the archive one will be the very first demos I put out. And that's why we released it backwards. Cause I was like, I don't feel like that stuff's rough, you know, and that stuff, I mean, I'm sure for some people it's got some value. For me, you know, I'm not listening to this stuff, so it's not stuff I particularly think. I'd just listen to it to put the archives together. But I was like, man, like I don't know that I want to be leading with this. You know, I'd rather lead with the stronger stuff, which is the more recent stuff. So that is the last thing that will come out, other than the electronic. I think the electronic one will be a nice little end cap, and that is actually more older electronic stuff, so that's really rough around the edges as well for the most part. But yeah, it's you know, there is no real rhyme or reason aside from, you know, general sort of chronology.
I like your take on that. It's also creating a very cool unintentional countdown, which is very cool, especially in a year that's been so hard for everybody. It's cool to have something to look forward to musically. Like in this, like, you know, it's coming. Like every week we do not only do we do, like most websites, a new Music Friday post, we do a new show and we rattle off like what albums are coming out this week. And it's like Bulb Archives 8, Bulb Archives 7,
Yeah,
like every couple of weeks.
yeah.
So I love the consistency, and it just worked out that way. I have to say, I'm glad you mentioned electronic because it's almost my favorite one. I love the orchestral. I've listened to all of them a little. I listen to some more than others. I've gone back to the I've gone back to the orchestral one a few times, and I'm glad you mentioned the electric one because it's definitely. I know you said it's older, but whatever it is, it's definitely got like a vibe that I like.
Interesting. Yeah, that's great. I figure some people will be drawn to certain, you know, archives more than other. I mean, like I'm not listening to any of this crap, so it's for you guys. But you know, the countdown's kind of interesting too. I guess I haven't made like an official statement, but I've mentioned this a few times. But I am working on a solo album, like an official release, Bulb release. So, you know, although I don't know that I'm going to get it done in time to where it could be released like right as this is out, it will be out like sort of shortly after. So it is a countdown of sorts in that sense as well.
Nice, man. I'm very, very much looking forward to a solo record. We're getting very spoiled by you because, you know, we just had Hail Stan last year from Periphery, and you know, constantly, I know you're constantly working, but you're really spoiling us with a lot of material.
I just like writing.
The diehards. I just like it. Nice, yeah, man. That's. I figured you must work. You know, just play every day. I imagine, and write whatever.
No, I don't. I'm very lazy. That's the thing is like I feel like a very lazy musician, but I just enjoy it. And I don't think I'm good at it either. I always sort of the way I think about it, because I love video games. I don't know if you're a gamer, but I'm not a very good gamer, but I love it. And it's exactly the same thing with music. Is like I don't consider myself to be a particularly good musician, but I just really enjoy making it. But I don't enjoy making it when I don't have to make it. So I'm not writing every day. I'm not playing music every day. But when I'm doing it, I'm making sure it counts, you know?
I dig that a lot. Yeah, that's important. And I think also, just listen, you've been in the music game a very long time by most standards, and you carved out a really incredible career and all these varied interests and cool things you do, but also it has to keep being interesting to you. So like, I know that the fans probably are demanding stuff, you know, like you said, they're doing it themselves. I better step in and participate or I'm going to get left behind. Reminds me of Prince. Since I mentioned Prince before, he always said you got to be like on top of your career. Your career is going to be on top of you. And, you know, but it sounds, you know, like you've got a very good perspective about it. And I appreciate that, like, you know, it's meaningful for it to be important to you to, you know, you got to want to work, right?
Yeah. And you got to be inspired. Like, you know, I'm sure, and I know that, you know, some fans or some of the fans out there want certain things from us musically or whatever, but that's just really never factored into anything. And I think the fact that we've been allowed to create a career for ourselves by doing exactly what we want just encourages that behavior. So we we unfortunately never write anything with the fans in mind, and that probably will never change. That's not terribly fun to me. I do write to spec sometimes because for my companies, I'll write for like promo or ad stuff, and then it's fun, and I'm working towards a different goal. Um, but like, yeah, we're not like factoring in like, oh, it'd be good is if we have like a radio song, or like the fans really wish we would do this kind of sound or that. We can't even, honestly, we can't even write to our own spec because, take Hailstand, for example, right? Like, that's a pretty dark and heavy album. If you had talked to us before when we were kind of all hyped about getting together to write, but we hadn't written together for it, we were all talking about doing something kind of chill and lighthearted and ambient and vibey. Like, that's where everybody's head was at. And then we all got together and just wrote a heavy, dark album. And it was like, well, I guess that's where we're at. You don't fight it. I always say you follow the thread, just see where it takes you. First thing we wrote was Reptile. This is the other thing is we always want to write, like, our goal is to write an 8-song, like 45-minute long album. And the first thing we write is like this 15-minute long song. It's like, oh God, like, well, we already screwed up, and it's heavy and it's dark. It's like we didn't meet any of our own expectations right off the bat. So how could we even meet the fans? We know our expectations, but ultimately we're just following instinct on all of this stuff and just trusting the instinct to take us to a complete album.
That's amazing. And I got to also point out that I feel like, especially veteran artists, they're very comfortable and complacent, and they forget how to self-edit. So it's really cool to hear you give that perspective. As very, very, as a journalist and following this music for a long time, it's very cool to hear you say that, because I do find that other artists have a hard time self-editing. And again, what are the expectations? What am I supposed to deliver? Deliver something you want. I think Hail Stands absolutely one of my top 3 favorite Periphery albums.
Thanks,
because
man.
I like dark and heavy stuff anyway, and like, I needed that record last year. I probably need another one like it right now because this year.
Well, maybe that's what it was. Maybe we're just reacting to the.
I needed it.
Maybe we wanted to do something vibey and light. It's just like this is just not what's coming up. But you're a writer. You probably get in a flow state sometimes. I'd say that for me personally, if there's anything I'm actually chasing, it's not even a song or complete product. Like, those are the byproducts of chasing the dragon on the flow state. It's like those states where you don't even feel like you're writing. You feel like you're just watching the process happen before your very eyes. You get a good group of people together who have good chemistry, and that happens. And it happens so much better with other people, which is why I've done all these side projects before ever tackling a solo project. And like, that is what we're chasing, is that flow state. And whatever music comes of that flow state is our album. So it's really like, I think people don't realize what it is that what our goal is with writing. And it's like how music is almost the byproduct of what we're chasing in a way.
Nice. I like that philosophy too. And yeah, that's, again, ultimately at the beginning or the end of the day, it needs to please you. And I think the fans have become accustomed to not getting too wrapped up into like whatever they do, it's going to be good. It may subvert expectations, but like, the Periphery fans especially seem to be on a journey with you. And I think you've cultivated your own Misha fans, like, and stands, if you will. And, they will, bad pun intended. And, I feel like they're also, willing to just kind of go with you on whatever.
Yeah, I think the ones that aren't, we've lost already, and they were maybe never customers to begin with. So there's an understanding. It's like, we're very grateful for people who come along for the ride, because it is a very selfish pursuit. It's like, we're gonna do this thing that has nothing to do with you guys, and it's amazing people show up to shows and support us, and that's great. It doesn't make us want to change anything about that dynamic, but I do understand how it's a selfish prospect. And I do think, in a sense, it's a bit ridiculous that anyone would follow it, but I'm super grateful that people do, because it's not necessarily a fair prospect to the listener, but I'm just glad that there's a dynamic where they feel like they're getting something out of it. So now it's an accepted thing. It's like, we're just going to do our thing. Like, it's very, very possible some of our fans will hate whatever the next thing is we put out, but that's okay. I can live with that.
I dig it. And obviously this has been a ridiculous dumpster fire time I hope it's been a good time for you personally. I hope you're well. I hope you're safe. I hope all the guys are safe. I hope your family is safe. This is just nuts, viruses and civil unrest and lightning strikes and fires. Holy shit. What else? Meteors, what murder hornets. I hope, other than music, which is obviously keeping you very busy, I hope you're personally okay.
Well, I'm fine because this is all a liberal hoax, and the reptilians are the. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, no,
I
we're
got scared for a minute.
no,
I got scared.
good. No, like I mean, I'd say that I'm very lucky. I'm keeping safe. I hope you are too, and you and your family and your friends.
Hmm.
I think I'm trying to find that balance of being sort of diligent, but also trying to, in a cost benefit sort of way, enjoy my life as well. So far so good. Knock on wood. And everyone's healthy. But yeah, I'm just trying to be careful. Obviously, following all the rules, wearing a mask, all that stuff, which I would assume is common sense, but sometimes isn't. But yeah, it's definitely a crazy time. I will say I'm more fortunate than most. I got lucky. I mean, that's really all there is to it. I have businesses that didn't really suffer from the whole COVID thing, but that has nothing to do with tactical or business strategy or anything. That's just dumb luck because there are people who are much smarter than me and much more successful than me who lost a lot or everything. So I just this time I got lucky. It did sort of reinforce how fragile the whole situation is, how I shouldn't take things for granted, and also how I should have a plan should everything go tits up, as it were. But, I'll just enjoy it for now, I guess,
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, I was going to ask you about, obviously beside gear, Horizon Devices, there's no NAM, which is like catastrophic for that business. Um, how does that affect you, if at all? Is new? I know you were working on like new stuff all the time.
NAM is NAM for us. NAM is what I'd say that's more a remnant of the past. I think I have a lot to say about that, but we could just sum it up as I think NAM is something that has been sort of grandfathered into the internet era on its own momentum. And much in the same way that, for better or for worse, there have been a lot of businesses or dynamics of business and trade that have been exposed as a bit unnecessary. It might be victim to that because in the age of the internet, I think it's more of a novelty or curiosity than sort of a necessity. Like back in the mail order catalog days and the dealer network days, I think it held a lot more weight. We did it. I mean, I hate to say kind of for fun last year, but and it was good. We got a lot of good business done, but we're not losing sleep over there being no NAM next year. And obviously, like any large convention, will suffer before some sort of small meeting. It's unfortunate. I think there's a lot of companies that do need NAM, so it sucks for those companies. But again, we're in a fortunate position because we're a more modern company. We run lean. We don't have a lot of employees. We're mostly direct. We're entirely direct with GGD. So these things aren't really as affected. But again, just got lucky. Like this isn't anything other than dumb luck working in our favor here.
Gotcha. In the meantime, hearing that, I assume no plans or anything you were going to roll out this year or the beginning of next is not derailed, and you're still, I'm sure, plugging away on development and sales.
Yeah. Business as usual. Surprisingly, there's some delays on the manufacturing side, as with every company that deals with manufacturing. But on the software side, no, like everything's kind of trucking along as planned. If anything, sales have been up because a lot of people are home recording music. So the demand is there. We're in a very strange time because there's a bit of a dichotomy going on economically. If you got screwed and lost everything, obviously your life just got absolutely destroyed or close to it. But it seems like there's also a fair number of people who are entirely unaffected financially, maybe beneficially affected, and then now have access to very attractive loans that were, put out there to encourage the economy. So like in certain housing markets, you're seeing a seller's market. In a lot of luxury items, you're seeing seller's markets. It's a very strange thing to observe. And obviously, the stock market's crushing it right now. Anyone who got in on that, what was it, in March where it just dipped, anyone who got in has been making tons of money off the stock market. So it's a very interesting time, and you can't look at any one of these sort of these criteria to make a judgment about where things are at, because for as much as some people are doing well, there's some people who are suffering terribly, you know?
Totally, and I don't ever want to lose sight of that, which is why I ask those questions, and I appreciate that answer a lot, man. You know, it's very easy to have a very you know, microscopic view of your own life and what's going on with it, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on out there, and not everybody's been lucky or fortunate. So, very, very good. Do you? I've always wondered, do you have like a favorite piece of gear you've made and given to the world, and conversely, is there a least favorite piece of gear? Like, that's awesome for someone else, but I would never use it. Or is that not cool to say?
No. I can be open about that. I would say that you know, my signature guitar took a lot of time to put together. It took about 3 years of development, and you know, I was obsessed with getting it just right. Honestly, all the things we put out are passion projects. Like both Horizon Devices and GGD, and all my signature things were things where the money aspect of it and the ability to make profit was secondary. It's more like you give a gear nerd an opportunity to create something. Of course, they're gonna go ham, and I did. I could have rushed out a guitar if I much quicker. You know, the original plan was to get it out in NAMM, which was going to be 8 months later, and I could have just taken an existing shape and, you know, throw a different color on it or a different headstock or something, called it a day. But I was like, I get the opportunity to design something from the ground up. We're going to do it. It took 3 years, a lot of road testing and studio testing and whatever, and we got it right. So I'm very proud of that. And the pickups that I've done with bare knuckle. Again, all these things are passion projects, and we don't have to put any of these things out. So if they don't come out well, there are projects that have never seen the light of day because they just didn't come out well. Like we started prototyping. So the ones that I don't feel good about, you guys don't know existed ever. they just got canned because it was like, well, just can't. You know, for example, we were working on a bridge at one point with Horizon Devices, and you know, we had prototypes going, and we just couldn't get it quite the way that we wanted it, and it wasn't the criteria was it had to sound better than what I was using currently. We're not just gonna put it out to put it out, and I have to genuinely feel great about it, and we weren't at that point. It's not to say we've given up on it completely, but that didn't come out. Yeah, so it's just anything that we've put out because we're like, this is genuinely a great product. If you look at the precision drive with Horizon Devices, that was something that I just wanted to buy from another company. You know, like I was just like, I don't know why, you know, if you're putting boosts in front of an amp, why they don't have more controls. And if you're putting a gate after it anyways, why it doesn't have it built in. And I was shocked that no one else was making it. So we were like, okay, well, let's see if we can sell 500 of these. And even that was like a daunting prospect. Meanwhile, it turns out a lot of people were asking the same question because we pre-sold our entire first batch, I think in the first day or two. So like, you know, a lot of these things are just passion projects. And then we're like, whoa, this thing has legs. Let's see where it takes us. It's basically it.
I think my only take on the current gear market is it's very interesting. It is kind of an interesting time in the game right now for you know, people who are looking for certain, you know, to create an original sound, or you know, they have a artist they really love, so they want to take some of that, whatever it is, and incorporate it. It's interesting that I feel like some of the DIY companies are being the most innovative, and you know, even the pricing is very fair. Like you could get so much more for some of these things. And then I'm not going to name names. I could, of the big chains and the big online retailers who are, you know, doing very well. We saw that there's an industry-wide spike on gear right now because people are home, and if you can and you're able to, they're recording and need things. But I have seen some companies, it's kind of shamefully, you know, some of their practices are irritating to me as a former musician, regular musician. So I wonder about, you know, others, but I appreciate that you have kind of kept things very consistent the whole way through. I think it's fans recognize that too. That's why they stay loyal.
Well, these are passion projects for us at the end of the day. You know, like they are passion projects that we make a living with. So that's great. But, you know, we have internal mission statements with these companies, you know, to keep us in check and keep us grounded. Sometimes we're debating what to price something or what to do. We could look back at our mission statement and be like, well, let's not forget, like, this is what we intended. Sometimes you can get carried away, and sometimes you'll kind of forget like why you started this in the first place. So it's good to have those keep you grounded and to keep you on track to what your original goals were, and not let other things sort of lead you down some paths that maybe you wouldn't have want to be led down if they hadn't happened so gradually, you know. So we're doing it from a very genuine place, and to me it's less about this piece of gear will make you sound like me. It's more like this piece of gear solves a problem that I think is pretty universal with anyone in this scene. You know, anyone who's tuning down low and going into a high gain amp, I don't care how much money you spent on it, like, is going to have a fundamental problem of that amp probably not being able to make much of those low frequencies, just because they're designed around like guitars with 10 to 46 in E. Precision Drive just solves that. So then 90% of people who put it in front of an amp will be like, oh, that's what I was hoping it would do, or this was the problem I was trying to solve. And it has very little to do with like, oh, now I will sound like Misha or whatever. Maybe there's that 10% that does, and maybe that's their goal. But I think for a lot of people, it's just a general problem solving tool that's sort of laser targeted at something that I know a lot about and that I experience myself. So I'm glad that the product exists for myself first, and then we might as well sell it to other people too.
Nice. Just to change gears for the last few questions, and you've been terrific, man. I appreciate you.
No worries.
What's on the pandemic year playlist for you? What music are you listening to, if any, just chilling around in your regular days?
You know, I talk about this a little bit. It's weird. I have a very strange relationship with music. I don't listen to a lot of music in general. I'm a bit of a terrible music fan. I find it very hard to listen to music because I get like super analytical. So I find it hard to enjoy music casually. I'll just start breaking it. Like, I can't listen to music passively. It's always an active process, and it's always a thing that just takes brain power, whether I wanted to or not. So it's not that I don't listen to music, but I'm just very sort of strategic. As I say, most of the time I have silence or podcasts on, you know, because those don't require my brain to be on in the same way. And even podcasts, I have to, you know, like, I'm not going to listen to Sam Harris's podcast while like playing a video game. You know, that needs my full attention there, right? So music's a very similar kind of thing. So like, I've been listening to a lot of Hammock lately, Sigaros. I've been listening to a lot of Tigran Hamasyan, just because he has a new album that's going to come out soon, and fucking love Tigran. What else have I don't know. Just some electronic stuff, I guess. John Hopkins. I always go back to John Hopkins because he's the GOAT. But yeah, that's mostly silence.
Nice. Sometimes that's good. Silence is gold and duct tape is silver. Is there a record from, you know, young Misha's life that was like really important to you then, that now you would be like, oh my God, I would never listen to this now?
Yeah, well, there's both, because there's ones that like really stood the test of time. You know, I was really into nu metal like when I was like 13 or 14. A lot of that stuff was very seminal. I think it was also my first exposure to any sort of heavy music. So that was sort of the gateway drug, you know. But like, yeah, I don't really like Korn and all that kind of stuff, and Limp Bizkit and all that. Like, I had those albums and I enjoyed them a lot. I listened to them a lot. I think at one point Korn was my favorite band. But now it just doesn't stand the test of time for me. But I also probably wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't, you know, the gateway. It was a very important gateway drug. But it's just like, as my taste changed and as I sort of laser focused on what it was I liked, because that was just sort of like the general catch-all of heavy music right there. And then I started to get more focused on like the progressive stuff, and, you know, discovering bands like Tool and then Dream Theater and then Meshuggah, like, you know, that was sort of the path that I went down, and that has a lot less in common, you know. For example, like not long after that, I got into Fear Factory. Well, that stuff holds up a lot better to me than like, you know, the nu metal stuff does. And that's sort of on that line there, in between. So, but on the other hand, like bands like Deftones, like I still love Around the Fur as much as I did back in the day, but that stuff always got grouped into the new metal thing, even though it wasn't. It was just like they didn't really have a word for what it was. So I think that was just always just Deftones, and that's why that probably withstood the test of time, because it just was its own thing,
Right. I feel like, yeah, Deftones, System, and Linkin Park transcended new metal. Like they started new metal and then they kind of evolved into something entirely
Right.
different. And yeah, I'm so pumped for this new Deftones. I can't even describe it.
Yeah, I think everyone is too, man.
Yeah, of course. And then I was thinking, like, yeah, Linkin Park is that Hybrid Theory's 20 this year, which is like,
See, to
wow.
me, that's one album I was super into when I was younger, and that just doesn't really stand the test of time for me. But I was like way into it. Like I used to like work out to that. That's how long ago it was I was working out. But
Amazing.
but yeah, that was a high school, middle school, high school thing, I think.
It was even for a guy like me that was into all kinds of thrash and doom and death metal. They were bangers. I love those first 5 Korn records. I love Deftones. Still to this day, I love those
Yeah, I mean,
records.
like I'm sure you have a pretty wide eclectic taste. I don't know why I like or dislike what I do now. I'm very picky with music, and I find it very hard to get into new music as well. So yeah, I just have a very strange relationship with music. It's not necessarily a good or a healthy one, but in some ways, I almost would rather just make it or not listen to it at all. I don't even really listen to the music I make. Um, like I'll listen to it while I'm working on it, and then maybe right after I write it, and then after that, it's like, oh yeah, this I'll find it again 2 years later. Be like, oh, that thing, I forgot about that thing. So more
I
stuff for
got
the archives.
you. The next 10.
Yep.
Bob Archives, volume 11 through 20. Just for a last thing, obviously this year is kiboshed any touring, and I'm sure you had some plans. Do you think that in terms of Periphery, you guys will get back on the road and continue to tour behind Hale Stan, or do you think that's already done and you're going to go write another record and tour whenever after?
That's an interesting question. We were like what I would say around like 3/4 or maybe even 4/5 of the way through our album cycle, at least what we had planned and strategized. So I think we had maybe a couple tours. We were basically we had some stuff booked, some stuff that people knew about, some stuff that people didn't know about. One tour in particular that's a real damn shame that didn't happen, because that was like a bucket list lineup. But like, shit happens. And I think our plan was like, barring any unknowns or things happening, we pretty much were going to finish out the touring this year, maybe do festivals next year, or maybe not even. No, we were supposed to do festivals this year. Sorry, that's what it was. We're going to do our festivals this year, finish out any touring, and then basically call it on the album cycle, and then maybe take another year or whatever to work on stuff. Now, with traveling being difficult and whatever, getting together to work is a bit more complicated now. So I'd say that that's probably more of a barrier than anything. Working remotely like works, but doesn't. That whole flow state thing I was talking about, and the chemistry and all that, is very hard to get going when you don't have people in the room. There's a real, like, almost palpable energy to that, and it's one of my favorite things. And to sort of write without that feels like maybe writing with an arm behind your back. So it's like, I I personally don't mind being a bit patient and waiting for things to be a bit easier to get together. And what I suspect will happen is like that will be the first step, and then we can consider touring. I could tell you this much: like, we're not going to be part of the first wave of bands to go out, most likely, for a number of reasons. But I think it's a very complicated time. Just on the liability front, I'm a little bit concerned. I don't want to be that first wave of bands that's getting sued, and we live in a rather litigious country, so I'm not trying to be the guinea pigs for that whole dynamic. But after a few rounds of that, it'll be interesting to see where things are and what touring even looks like. So if I had to sort of make a prediction, and it's a very, very terrible prediction because I'm bad at predictions, but I'd say maybe like touring around like 2022, maybe not even, who knows. And this is as things are changing. I mean, let me ask you, 2-3 months ago, did you think we'd be here? You know?
I was really hoping it was going to be done by the summer. My entire life revolves around going to shows, photographing and interviewing bands in person.
Right.
And just that scene. I'm here in Brooklyn, New York. We have people all over the world, London, LA, Chicago, etc., all of Europe. So yeah, it's tough. And I thought it was going to be a few months and it was going to die down, and it hasn't, and it doesn't seem to want to, and other people don't want to let it because they're idiots. And I was sick to start the year, and I'm sheltering in place, and I've been out like maybe completely the whole year. Yeah, I've been out like maybe 2 dozen times since the
Yeah.
pandemic hit. So like that's like tops. No, not a train ride, not a no long travel. Maybe once I went on a trip, to another part of the city, but that was it. Like yeah.
Yeah.
No.
So making predictions about where we'll be 3 months from now seems a bit irresponsible. Just for this exact same reason, because it's like, sure, I'd like to think maybe things will have loosened up, but I think things may also be somewhat unfathomably different than what we expect. So I'd say I'm more on we're just taking it as it goes. I'd say we're pretty fortunate that we completed most of our album cycle. Not every band was as fortunate as that. Some were just starting tours. Some had just released albums or were just about to release an album. And it obviously sucks to release an album if you can't tour to support it. So we're in a position right now where it's like, is there really much of an impetus to get together and write other than just for the pure love of writing, which would be a thing if we could meet up? If we were all in the same area, we 100% would be writing just for the sake of writing. But with there being a logistical hurdle, is there really a reason to risk that and put all this effort in to just not even be able to put it out at an opportune time? I don't know. And that's not to say that the answer is no. It's just to say the answer is I don't know. And all we could do is just take it as it goes.
Gotcha. Misha, man, you are a delight, and I really appreciate you sharing your story with Ghost Cult and our fans. Congratulations. I think it's amazing, and this Bulb Archives project is ridiculous and awesome, and I really appreciate you.
It is
absurd. Great. It's absurd and excess in the best way. Like
all right,
a creative, artistic way. It is in the best way possible. So I thank you.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.